My name is Lena Whitmore. I'm 29 and I live in a chic apartment nestled in the hills of Hollywood. On paper, my life is the kind people dream about: a rising fashion director for a luxury lifestyle magazine, an apartment with a skyline view, and a charming husband named Adrian, 32. A film set lighting designer with a heart as gentle as his eyes. To the outside world, we were the picture-perfect couple, supportive, affectionate, the kind that sent holiday cards with coordinated outfits. But the truth is, Hollywood doesn't just manufacture movies, it sells illusions. And sometimes we start believing our own. Between my constant deadlines and Adrian's back-to-back shoots, the small cracks that once went unnoticed began widening into quiet gulfs of distance and misunderstanding. I told myself it was normal, just a phase. But I had no idea how fast those cracks would split my world open. Then came Dante Vega, charismatic, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. He was the editor-in-chief of the magazine, recently relocated from New York, and from the moment he walked into the office, he carried a storm with him. Tall, sharp-suited, with an accent that hinted at old Havana, Dante didn't just walk, he claimed space. I told myself I wasn't interested. I had Adrian, I had my life. But when Dante invited me to a private dinner to discuss a potential creative rebranding campaign, I said yes. Not because I had to, but because something in me wanted to feel noticed again. Strictly work, his email had said, but the glint in his eye during meetings and the way he always seemed to read my thoughts made it clear boundaries were already blurring. I didn't tell Adrian. I told myself it didn't mean anything. That was mistake number one. The restaurant was tucked in a rooftop garden off Sunset Boulevard, candlelit and dangerously intimate. I wore a dress I hadn't worn in years, the kind that made me feel alive. Dante stood as I approached, his smile warm but charged. We toasted over red wine and talked about fashion art dreams, things Adrian and I hadn't shared in months. Then, just as dessert arrived, I felt a shift in the air. I turned, and there was Adrian standing near the entrance, his expression frozen in betrayal. Our eyes met. I opened my mouth, but no words came. He didn't shout, didn't cry. He just turned and walked away. I sat there, stunned, my fork hovering mid-air, Dante quietly observing me. I didn't follow Adrian out. I stayed seated. And in that moment, something irrevocable happened, not just in my marriage, but in who I thought I was. Lena knew well the boundaries between professionalism and emotion, but the encounter with the new CEO and founder of the magazine, Vincent Lemaire, was like a strange breeze rippling through her otherwise still inner world. Vincent, 41. French with steely gray eyes and a sharp, quiet charm, had a presence that captivated not only investors, but left the editorial staff, including Lena, choosing their words carefully around him. During a regular strategy meeting, Vincent invited Lena to dinner to discuss the visual direction more thoroughly. The invitation was unexpected, but she accepted it, seeing it as a chance to prove her worth. Adrian, usually not the jealous type, smiled when she mentioned the dinner. He was busy rigging lighting on a night set and didn't question it. Lena told herself it was completely innocent until she walked into the restaurant atop the Chateau Marmont. The setting was far too intimate. Vincent's remarks about the loneliness of ambition and the way his eyes lingered on hers, it all triggered internal warning bells that she chose to ignore. Everything began to unravel the moment Lena saw Adrian standing at the entrance of the restaurant. He didn't shout, didn't make a scene. He just quietly walked away like a man stabbed in the back. The way he turned, not rushed, not angry, broke her more than any outburst could have. Lena left the table shortly after, searched for him, but he was gone. She called, texted, no response. When she got home, the lights were off. His shoes were no longer by the door. For the first time in years, their West Hollywood apartment felt hauntingly silent. On the kitchen counter lay a sack, neatly folded note in Adrian's handwriting. Lena, I need time. Please don't call. Don't text. At the bottom, a sentence he had never said before. I thought you understood me. The words hit her like a punch. Lena's logic screamed, it was just a business dinner. But her heart knew the truth. It was her eyes, her self-indulgence, her silence at the ethical boundary that was betrayal. The following days were a blur of exhaustion. Lena tried to hold onto her job, pretending nothing had happened. But gossip in the office spread faster than a Santa Ana breeze. Someone saw Vincent place his hand on her back, exiting the elevator. Another whispered, "The creative director is cozy with the boss now." But the most painful silence came from Adrian. He didn't return home. He didn't respond to her long messages. One day HR called her in. "You might want to keep your distance from the CEO for a while." She froze. Things were spiraling. Vincent said nothing to defend her. And Adrian. His silence was the loudest message of all he had left, gone back to his mother's house in Santa Barbara. Lena also lost her longtime colleague and close friend Casey, who had known Adrian since college and chose to side with him. One night after a long photo shoot, Lena broke down when she saw Adrian's shirt still hanging behind the bedroom door. No one had moved it. She couldn't sleep. Instead, she wrote Adrian a letter, not to ask for forgiveness, but to confess that she had been arrogant for thinking she could control everything. In the letter, she spoke of the loneliness of being praised but never truly loved, and the warmth she once received from the man who used to quietly make tea for her every night she worked late. Lena started therapy. She stopped drinking. She scaled back her work hours. She volunteered at a nonprofit photography program for high school students in Watts. There, for the first time, she saw someone's eyes light up because they learned something from her, not because of status or reputation. Slowly, she began to understand that her worth didn't lie in rooftop parties or flashbulbs, but in protecting the trust of those who mattered most. Adrian didn't come back right away. Not until the third month after receiving Lena's third letter did he reply, "Thanks for being honest. I'm still learning how to heal." One December afternoon, they met at their old coffee shop. No hug, no tears, just two people sitting across from each other recounting 3 months of separation. Adrian talked about learning to cook with his mom and how he realized he lost himself in a marriage with someone who always walked faster. Lena didn't ask him to return. She only said, "If one day you can trust me again, I'll still be here. Not to be loved, but to learn how to love the right way." They parted with a nod, no promises, no begging. But when Adrian walked out of the cafe, Lena felt lighter. Not because he forgave her, but because for the first time in her life, she chose not to run from the consequences. The first winter after Adrian left was the loneliest season of Lena's life. West Hollywood rarely got cold, but that year felt different. The chill wasn't in the air, it was in the silence of their apartment. She stopped listening for his keys at the door. She stopped hoping his voice would echo from the hallway. Instead, she started learning how to be present with herself. Therapy became more than just a routine. It became a lifeline. She journaled every night. She walked without her phone. She cooked dinner for one. In the stillness, Lena found no grand epiphanies, just a slow understanding that healing wasn't a destination, it was a process. A hard, messy, nonlinear one. And maybe that was okay. Instead of fighting to reclaim her old life, Lena started building a new one. At the nonprofit, she mentored a 17-year-old named Janelle, who reminded her a bit too much of herself, bright, fierce, but always trying to prove something. One afternoon, when Janelle nailed a shot Lena had taught her, she turned and said, "Thanks, Miss Lena. That felt good." And for once, Lena didn't crave recognition or applause. That moment was enough. She began spending weekends at public libraries doing portfolio reviews for students who couldn't afford art school. Her nights were quiet, her work more intentional. For the first time in years, her creativity wasn't driven by pressure or ego, but purpose. In mid-February, Lena received a letter postmarked from Santa Barbara. It was from Adrian. Inside a simple note, "Saw your latest photo series in the Times. You always had an eye for light." It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a door swinging open, but it was something a crack in the wall. She held the letter for a long time, letting it warm her fingers. For weeks, she didn't reply. She wasn't ready. But she smiled a little more in the mornings, and her journal entries softened. She didn't write to win him back. She wrote because she finally had something real to say. By spring, Lena had 2 job offers, one from a top-tier magazine in New York, the other from a grassroots art collective in Echo Park. The old her would have picked prestige without blinking. But, standing at the crossroads now, Lena chose the collective. She wanted slowness, integrity, space to mentor and make mistakes without the spotlight. When she called to accept, the director told her, "We're excited you get it." That night, she walked through Runyon Canyon as the sun dipped behind the hills, letting the breeze run through her coat like a quiet exhale. She didn't need to be the headline anymore. She just needed to feel like herself. In early summer, Adrian visited the collective. He came to see a student showcase, but Lena knew better. They hadn't spoken in months. He looked different, stronger, softer. After the event, they walked to a taco truck nearby, talking about nothing and everything. There was no big apology, no rehashing of pain, just a shared quiet. As they sat on the curb eating in companionable silence, Adrian said, "I like who you're becoming." Lena blinked back tears. Not because she needed him to say that, but because she finally believed it too. Lena never moved back in with Adrian. At least not yet. Some wounds take longer than others. But they did start meeting every other Sunday for coffee, for walks for no reason at all, and maybe that was enough. The past didn't vanish, regret didn't evaporate, but in its place grew something sturdier: honesty, humility, quiet care. Lena often thought about that night at Chateau Marmont, the dinner that spiraled into a storm. If she could go back, she wouldn't erase it. It broke her open, but it also let her rebuild with better blueprints, with a heart that knew how to stay. The story didn't end with a kiss or a vow. It ended with a hand reaching for hers across a table one slow Sunday morning, and Lena finally reaching back. Life lessons from Lena's story. A wake-up call on emotional boundaries and self-worth. Lena's journey is more than just a cautionary tale. It's a mirror, reflecting the quiet fractures that often go unnoticed in modern relationships. In a world where ambition and aesthetics are celebrated, it's easy to lose sight of what truly sustains a bond: emotional honesty, mutual respect, and presence. Her story reminds us that betrayal doesn't always begin with infidelity. It often starts in smaller, quieter moments: a withheld truth, an ignored discomfort, a misjudged connection. Many modern women, especially those balancing demanding careers and complex emotions, may find echoes of themselves in Lena. She wasn't malicious, she was exhausted, lonely, and like many, tempted by the validation that power and charm can offer. But what she underestimated was the emotional cost, the slow erosion of trust, and the silent unraveling of a partnership that once felt unshakable. The lesson: boundaries are not just about saying no to others, they're about saying yes to the values that keep us grounded. Emotional responsibility isn't a burden, it's a form of love. And healing begins the moment we choose truth over appearance, humility over ego. Whether or not Lena and Adrian reconcile is beside the point. What matters is Lena's decision to confront her reflection, take accountability, and rebuild herself, not for someone else, but for the woman she almost lost in the mirror. Let this story be a reminder: love doesn't survive in grand gestures, but in everyday choices. Choose respect, choose presence, and above all, choose growth even when it's painful.